Joining us now, House Homeland Security ranking member. He is Congressman John Katko back with us. Congressman, it's great to have you back on. What was your reaction when you heard the reports that the Pentagon will not rule out working with the Taliban in future potential airstrikes against ISIS or other terrorists? And also NSA Jake Sullivan indicating that we will be giving U.S. aid, U.S. money to the Taliban. What's your reaction?
Well, my jaw hit the floor, to be honest with you. And let's take a step back here. The United Nations still has the Taliban on a list of terrorist organizations, and we're going to deal with them, and we're going to give them aid. And are they going to really go after Al Qaeda? Are they going to protect Al Qaeda like they have for the last 20 years? They refuse to renounce Al Qaeda, and yeah, sure, they'll help you go after ISIS to get out a common enemy, that being ISIS. But are they going to really go after Al Qaeda? And let's not forget, 20 years ago, Al Qaeda trained in Afghanistan under Taliban watch to attack the United States. And as we know, in 9/11, that had tragic consequences. So to me, it's unbelievable that they would think about this instead of projecting strength and telling them that if something happens to our citizens or something happens that causes harm in the United States, they're going to pay a heavy price. That's what we should be doing.
U.S. taxpayers have already given hundreds of billions of dollars over the 20 years into Afghanistan. And we're also talking tens of billions of dollars of military equipment as well. I mean, this is the same Taliban killing freedom fighters for democracy in the Panjshir Valley. And critics like Nikki Haley say under no circumstance should the U.S. or any government recognize a group that gives protection to, quote, suicide bombers and religious Nazis. That's what Nikki Haley's saying.
Nikki Haley's a very smart person, and she's absolutely right. I completely agree with her. To me, when you start dealing with the devil, and they are the devil, they're literally beheading people that in the last few weeks that have been known to cooperate with the United States, beheading them, and we're going to be their friends. It's almost as bad as sending $150 billion to Iran to sweeten up the Iran nuclear deal, and dealing with one of the largest state sponsors of terrorism in the world, Iran, which President Biden did when he was vice president. So. We have to project strength, and not to be a bully, but to let them know that if they do harm to us or they do harm to our citizens, there's a heavy price to pay. And if we don't project that, we get what we have now: 13 dead American soldiers that didn't have to happen because of poor planning and because of poor execution, and putting these soldiers in harm's way with a group that we should have never been dealing with in the first place.
Yeah, widespread outrage over that, Congressman. You know, Congress has oversight duties of what the president did in botching the pullout. You know, if Congress is supposed to be involved in, going into war, then Congress does have a duty on oversight in pulling out and weighing in ahead of time on how pullouts and evacuations are held. But it looks like the president did a waiver of a federal statute mandating that the Pentagon do a briefing of Congress on their terror risks and the risks of a withdrawal out of Afghanistan. That happened in June. So we see instead a lot of rhetoric, right, Congressman? And you and I have been talking about the rhetoric, too. I'd like your reaction to the sound bites that keep coming in where the White House and the team there indicate that they do have the leverage. They've got everything under control. When you watch this, it sure doesn't feel that way. Watch this.
The first thing we have to do is ensure that we can get air routes and land routes secured, and that's what we're working on.
It will be necessary to have some form of communication and coordination with the Taliban to continue to evacuate people from the country. They oversee Afghanistan, the majority of large swaths of the country.
Do you have a number for have any Americans gotten out since that last flight?
I don't have data to provide on that front.
So you see that. So we were just talking to Nathan Sales, former top counterterrorism expert. And he was just saying, listen, as soon as they knew that this would collapse, that's when you start evacuating Americans, not later. You don't set up after the fact, an artificial arbitrary deadline and then do it rushing up to that. You get Americans out first and let the mission decide the timeline. Your reaction, sir?
Yeah, he's exactly right. And this was so botched on so many levels. And why you would let up a safe and secure Bagram Air Base to effect the withdrawal and go to a city in the center of the city of Kabul to do the withdrawal from that airport, and let the Taliban form a ring around the airport to prevent Americans and others from getting in to get out of Kabul is unbelievable to me. So there's a substantial amount of oversight that must be done, and I really applaud Congressman Meeks on House Foreign Affairs Committee and Congressman McCall for having a hearing coming up with Secretary of State Blinken. They're going to start asking these tough questions. And there's an awful lot of tough questions to ask going forward, and we're all going to be part of that oversight, because I want to know if the president was told that this was going to happen and he's still stubbornly stuck to this, knowing the disaster that was going to happen, there should be a lot of accountability for him as well. And so our job in Congress is to have oversight, and we're going to do a hell of a lot of oversight going forward, that I assure you.
Congressman John Katko, pleasure having you on. Come back soon, Congressman. It's good to see you.
For sure.